Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Prep Phase podcast brought to you by Predator Gaming. Of course, this is the official podcast of Rainbow Six Esports that brings together all the regions and more. We're still at home as we're awaiting Stage 2 to begin, but that's the perfect time for us to start talking about said Stage 2 and kind of the fallout of tournaments so far that brings us into it. Of course, as always, I'm your host, Milosh, and friends of the show, Fresh and Fabian from EU and APAC League are in with today our special guest, Titan. How are you guys all doing? Come on, one by one. Fresh, Fabian, Titan. Give me. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. I stayed up till 4 a.m. playing ranked. I can't stop playing Siege at the minute. Like, genuinely, I'm not just like shilling. I can't stop playing Siege to the point that I'm dreaming about normal things taking place as you do in dreams, but it's happening on Siege maps. And I'm just living in this alternate universe of just Siege. So
which map? Is there a specific map?
Last night I was on Theme Park. I was just having an argument with my brother in my dream, but it was in...
Which room? Can we ask Des for callouts?
Split. Yeah, no. It was in Armory Throne, and we were just having an argument and throwing stuff at each other.
Fabian, are you normal?
I mean, in comparison to what I just heard, yeah, I'm very normal. I'm the most normal person you'll ever meet. Yeah, no, I'm just chilling at home, living life, being close to the sea. That's nice.
Nice and relaxing. And Titan, of course, from Team Secret. How are you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. No, I'm doing well. Long days, long hours, obviously getting ready for UL, and sadly also stayed up until 4 a.m. because Jack wouldn't let me leave. But yeah, other than that, all good.
Is he holding you hostage? Please blink twice directly into the camera if you need help. Thank you. Okay, there we go. It's clear and set in stone. So thank you very much, Titan, for joining us. Fresh and Fabian today. We'll all be talking about some different topics as always. 4 segments, though, really depends on every single episode as we try different things in each one. That's the whole kind of spice of life going through it. First up, as always, is esports news. What's been happening in our beloved Rainbow Six Esports over the past couple of weeks since the major? Last time we had a chat, brought on OXG members, got Laxing and Fox that we talked about things and their performance. And today we want to kind of prepare ourselves for Stage 2 by examining the different regions and what they have gone through. And since we have Titan, it's a perfect moment for us to talk about those regions, especially one that he's very familiar with, more than others, because from what Jack's told me, you will nonstop watch every single region, Titan. Is that true?
Yeah, I try to watch as much as possible where I can.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it? So let's go through things one by one. First of all, EU, considered by many the weakest region currently in Rainbow Six. Would you agree with that, Fabian?
I don't know if they're the weakest. I think APAC is still hovering around the same spot, but I think we're far behind both NA and LATAM at the moment, and I think we have an overall issue with the entire league. Well, not the league so much, but maybe the teams.
Would you echo that too, Fresh, or how does it go on your side?
I'm maybe not as bitter as Fabian is about it, to be honest. I don't know. I think there's a lot of teams that are in a kind of have been in a crisis point over the past 6 months, and they're still trying to find a way out of it.
Who? Give me names.
Who? Oh, no. I think there's a few bright sparks for EU. And then, I think G2 long term will be a good challenger for EU, probably BDS, as we always say. But the rest of the teams, it looks... I can't really put my finger on it, but they're not improving at the rate that NA and LATAM have been.
Speaking of that, Titan, what are your takes? Is Team Secret going number 1 this stage?
Oh goodness, no. I mean, let's be real here. We've got 2 new players in. We're obviously a team that's just come out in 9th place. I had to fill in for a majority of the stage.
You were good. How did you play so well, actually?
No, let's not go down that route. Worst rated, yeah, good. I was going to say, I can hold F. That's about it. Worst rated player ever in the history of 2.
Best punter in a EU is all I'm saying.
No, I think Fabian has a good point, though, to be fair, with the fact that EU in general is definitely fallen off considerably compared to sort of the other 2 regions in NA and LATAM. And I think a lot of that probably has to do with the infrastructure behind it, as well as just the general environment in terms of the continent, how teams operate, how they want to practice, and how they want to behave themselves and conduct themselves from the very top all the way to the bottom level down at tier 3, tier 4. There is a huge disparity in terms of, teams' professionalism and teams' sort of work ethic and determination and what their focus is. from, as I say again, from the top all the way to the bottom, and then therefore that obviously drips in and feeds into how the teams perform, and then their overall effects both domestically and internationally. And you saw it. I mean, Heroic, who is absolutely wiping the floor with the majority of Europe, struggled considerably at the major. Admittedly, it is their first LAN for a lot of those guys, and they haven't been in an environment anywhere near like that. And you're going to have the shakes. But at the same time, when you look at teams like BDS, for example, stalwarts again and struggling still, and then also teams like G2 as well, a team that should be, right at the very top, should be competing, should be punching way above where they are right now. But the reality is they're not. And is it because of the players? Not really. They're all individually some of the best players in the game, some of the best players in their region. So what is it? Is it the team itself? Probably not. Therefore, you have to look at the bigger picture. And I think that's where the problem comes for a lot of European teams.
That's the focus now. I wanna turn on towards it and really see, because Fresh and Fabian, they were a big part of European Siege in terms of competition. Fresh, you were analyst in the past. Fabian, you were also, big shot player. I don't know, somebody's told me that was the case. So you guys know the environment and how it was for professional players and teams from setting up practice, etc., all the way from the olden days to nowadays. So I kind of first want to look at how things were in the day, and then compare to what Titan was just mentioning, which is kind of that environment that Europe has gotten to now. So, Fresh, Fabian, how was it back in your days when, walk me through a day of how you're setting up practices, how things would go, how is the environment overall in there?
It's not just about one day though. That's where I think people see. It's not about what they do on a day-to-day basis. I still think the teams do mostly the same stuff, but it's more about the discipline and the decisions that they're making within those teams. Like, I see so much lack of discipline and basic misunderstanding of team play. Like, when I look EU players, they're all very talented. They're all more talented than I ever was individually. But when it comes to team play and how to set up a group decision or how to play as a team, most of them have no idea what the hell they're doing. It looks so messy. And it's just like, I think that EU have gone into a time where we value individual talent above what a team can do. And you can have 5 players that are maybe not as much talented when you come to the shooting department, but if they play as a group, they can trick those 5 players that are really talented individually. And sure, the individual guys, they will hit the nasty shots. But I think long term, the team that has strategies and play together, sure, the teams in EU have strategies now too, but it's just not the same.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, we'll talk about transfers, I guess, later on. But in terms of that kind of transfer decision, it definitely, especially recently with some of the transfers, it has been about individual talent or maybe potential, because there's obviously been a lot of young players picked up by teams, these 18-year-old kind of fraggers, even the established ones that have been in kind of Siege for a couple of stages now, Mowgli and Benja, for example. But I guess the one distinction that I hear consistently from teams, because obviously you speak to teams quite a bit, between kind of when that period when EU was kind of on top, or the kind of top stage for EU, is there was so many more teams available to practice on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. And I'm not exactly sure what's happened with the kind of tier 3 grassroots system, but there are far less teams available for teams to practice, which means teams are practicing less. And I know it's something that other regions have spoken about a lot as well. It's not just an EU problem, but at the minute, I know there's a lot of teams that are finding getting quality practices in very hard, because obviously the EU teams at the minute, the EUL teams, unless they've got a game that play day 8, play day 9, they won't be practicing each other until their game in the league is finished. And then Challenger League is once a year, so there's no kind of Challenger League teams to practice right now. Tier 3 is kind of intermittent with when it kind of starts in the national program. So there's a lot of teams that are getting far less practice than they used to be able to get, and therefore not able to implement, as much as Fabian says, like team play, that type of stuff that we're saying might not necessarily be worked on or prioritized. It's also a kind of availability issue that teams have got as well, is they've got far less time to practice that as well.
Is this the reality of it for you, Titan?
I mean, sometimes, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say it's always the quantity of teams, but it's definitely the quality and the caliber of the teams that we could play. I think back in the day, a few years ago at least, you could always sort of guarantee yourself a decent sort of quality scrim against a team that was generally there to practice, to look to get better. And there was a clear focus and sort of effort that they put forward to actually developing themselves, making themselves better during that, 3-hour period, 4-hour period, whatever it be. But nowadays you get it. And I mean, you'll scrim a tier 2 team, maybe tier 3 team, and the reality is a lot of those will come in and one day they'll be fine. You can clearly see they're working on something. The next day, you can scrim them back about 2 weeks later, and that same team will change their approach entirely. And it's more so a case of wanting to win the ego battle. And it's, maybe it sounds rude and a little bit harsh coming from a tier 1 perspective, but settle down a little bit. You're here to practice. You're here to learn. You should treat that sort of scrim and that practice time with respect. And you owe that to the tier 1 team as the tier 1 team owes that tier 3 team respect. And I think a lot of the issues has come to the fact that maybe in the past, both sides didn't respect each other. There's definitely a clash now, especially when you face a tier 3 team, for example. And for them, it's all about just wanting to take that ego challenge, wanting to win that scoreline by a crazy amount. But it doesn't matter. And if it ruins practice, in a sense, ruins in quotation marks, obviously, teams would rather and prefer do that than it is a case of trying to work on their own game, work on sort of consistency, working on building on the team play that Fabian says, working on trying to actually build their sort of, structure, their organization, their discipline. That goes entirely because all that matters is that green box goes win. You hit the first 7 kind of in the sense in practice. And that's all that matters to a lot of these teams. And fundamentally, if that's how teams are going to approach practice, if that's how you're going to approach your training time, that the only thing that matters to you is just, winning in practice. Doesn't matter how, doesn't matter if you're building consistency, doesn't matter if you're actually doing things that will apply to approach and, in a more sort of systematic and methodical approach. Stuff that, who cares? All I care about is just being able to get my 1s or 2s. And if that means that I'm doing that for 3 hours, my team, therefore, as a result, is playing 4v5, 5v4 within 20 seconds of every single round. And therefore, you don't really get a sort of true sense. And then on game day, the biggest thing here, on game day, you're not taking that same approach into your official games. And instead, you're sitting cowering in a corner till 1 minute left in the round or 30 seconds left in the round. How do you build consistency? How do you see where you're genuinely fundamentally going wrong in practice? And you can see it as well. The amount of teams in North America, LATAM, for example, that can win a 5v5 execute, a 4v4 execute, or know how to play as a team late round and how they can communicate and talk to one another. And you compare that now to Europe, shambolic. We are absolutely disgraceful at it. Every European team at the major, if you look at it, when those late round situations came to it, they could not hold their own against these international teams. And why? Simply because in practice, the teams themselves, as well as especially the other teams that they're facing in the lower tiers, don't treat the practice respect. Thus, you don't get it. And without it, how do you improve?
Where does that attitude from lower tier teams? We don't want to put all the blames on everybody here. There's just teams that really come in and have this sort of attitude, but the pool at some point has to be limited. What do you think that attitude has become the way that it is? And where do you think it comes from? It sounds a bit odd when you talk about it this way.
I think it could be a multitude of factors. I think it could be built over a period of time in terms of respect from maybe tier 3 teams, tier 2 teams, not feeling like tier 1 teams would go into practice and respect them. It could come down to what Fabian said as well about where individuals go into practice. And if they're just going in there to show off and, just kind of play their guns feel in a sense against these tier 3 teams rather than working on practice, that will obviously infuriate people. And over time, that sort of, that's a grudge that gets held more so than anything. And plus, on top of that, I think also you get sort of former players potentially in tier 3 teams that maybe have, were in tier 1 once, hold a grudge as well. They want to just sort of prove a point in practice. And then even for that, it's players that maybe in tier 3 that haven't had a tier 1 chance yet, had a trial, failed, want to go again, want to try and prove a point. And it's well, very good, very excellent. I'm glad you want to prove a point that you are good enough and you are better. But at the same time, what's the point of practice? What is the point of training? It's to improve yourself. You should train hard to then fight easy at the end of the day. And the reality is, if you're just going to train to sort of take the mick, really, then you're never going to get better. You're never going to become more consistent. You're never going to see any real growth or development as a team or as an individual, really, which I think is also another issue you see with a lot of these players, which is why you don't see EUL teams really picking up players 2, 3, 4 years down the line in tier 3, tier 2. You see them picking up 18-year-olds straight away and just dragging them into tier 1 and dropping them there and hoping they work a bit better. I mean, Keenan, for example, was, I think, one of the few players that's been around, was down in sort of the lower leagues for a few years before he got picked up. He had tier 1 trials. I know Fabian, he trialed with your team back in the day with Vitality. And you can see that, for Keenan, for example, he obviously took a little bit of time, but he flourished in the end. He's now one of the better players here in Europe. But Same time, you don't see many of them because the fact is both teams and individuals cannot progress. They cannot grow. They cannot develop in the environment that we currently provide within Europe.
Then what about the environment where you bring in Saves and Savage as Team Secret? Because Saves, obviously incredibly well-known, probably the most well-known Polish player that has ever competed in Rainbow Six. I think it's very difficult to argue otherwise, but why Saves and why Savage then?
I think I made a tweet, something along the lines of experience and talent. And the reality is, it's experience and talent. Savage is probably one of the best, hot properties as an 18-year-old right now in the game. He, very young, fearless.
Where did you find him?
But I mean, Savage is somebody I think that's always been on people's lips since he was like a teenager, alongside the likes of Spoit, Benja, kind of things like that. And also at the same time, for him, it was a case of I always watched obviously the lower leagues. I'm an avid supporter of the uni system here in the United Kingdom. So for them, when New team made Yukin 2, I was able to watch Savage play for 10 Star, and I was able to see him in Yukin 2. I was able to see him. I think did he play Rumble? He might have done.
Yes.
I think he did. I'm not sure. He might have been 17 at the time. Maybe. I can't remember.
Trying to remember.
Yeah, but so watching him there, you could see he had the talent, and then MPL this season especially was kind of his real shot at some, not necessarily the absolute big boys in the league, but he could face against the old few tier 1 teams. You could see how he would do against teams of what he should be competing against, his caliber, and I mean he was head and shoulders above pretty much everybody else in the league, and there was 5-6 players up there. Oh, he's obviously got that experience. He's got that sort of, natural talent as an 18-year-old that he has. And so we want to look to shape that and reform that into something that will work for us and, help him sort of smooth out the edges, teach him a bit more of what Fabian said, the fundamentals, basically, and just get him to be elevated as a player. And then Saves also helps with that in, every single aspect. Saves has plenty of fundamentals, very experienced player, very wise player, has lots of ideas to provide as well. And just he's also, I think, the big thing that a lot of people kind of forget about Saves and maybe didn't spot or notice really is how consistent he has been at tier 1 when he performs and when he plays. He's been one of the most consistent performers since he came to tier 1 to his last stage. It's not absolutely life games, it's not sort of the 1.3, 1.4 ratings that you see from Shaiko or Mowgli. But at the same time, it's not the Titan sort of performances of a 0.5 rating. So he's somewhere, he's like a 1.1, 1.1 rating.
Pretty good.
Exactly. It's good. You always know.
And it's consistently, you always get that good performance.
Which is something you need, as I think, at least from our perspective, as a ninth place team. You want someone that can always compete with the tier 1 players, put in a shift, put in the performance, and every week you have that sort of benchmark, that baseline that will always be there for your team. And then it's on sort of, the younger players, the fraggers, the star players, to then be able to pop off here and there, knowing that your backline is always going to be, solid. You're always going to have that stability for you. And it's just shoot, just get your guns going forward and you'll win.
Do you agree with that assessment, Fabian? having Savage and Saves now on Team Secret, do you think that'll be a big help for him?
I won't comment on individual players. I don't think that's my place. For me, it doesn't make sense for me to sit there and say that this player's going to make wonders and this one isn't. That's not the way that I look at the game. I don't look at the individuals. I look at the team as a whole. If they have a more complete team as a whole, I think so. But if the individuals are going to be the ones to I'm not looking at them being like, oh, this guy is better than this guy and this guy is better than that guy, because then it goes back into the individual part. I have no idea how either one of these two players functions in a team.
Okay.
So
we're gonna wait to see how they were gonna be in stage 2.
Save it when he gets on the desk.
Yes.
First game, if it goes terribly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna rip into it. If they play like team, if you have team play like shit, I will rip into it, because then it shows to me that even if you guys put down the work with the hours, it didn't make a difference. Yeah. And then you have picked the wrong players, and that's gonna be more based on the end of the stage. If you guys are playing just as poorly as you did before, because you guys didn't play a team game, you guys played a individual-based game where individual performance carried you through the victories that you got. If that is the same case after this stage, then you pick the wrong players. And I don't care which player it is that is wrong. It could be the 2 new players. It could be 2 of the old players. It could be all 5 players that aren't good enough. But I won't see that from the inside because I'm not part of the inside. We can sit here and me and Jack can sit on the desk and pretend that we know everything that's going on. We have no idea about 90. We have no idea about 90% of the players, how they work. The only players that we know about how they work are the players that we play with ourselves.
Yeah, all the information we get from teams when we speak to them, I guess, and even that is kind of limited and it's biased. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the one thing I will say, if you want a comment on an individual player, Milosh, is I was, I guess, maybe unfortunate or fortunate enough to scrim against Savage when I was. Titan was actually in the scrim, I think.
How long ago was that?
This would have been 6 months ago.
Okay.
And we were warming up 10-star for one of their games. And I remember Demo putting a type in chat, Savage, you are next up, you're going to win an invitational. Like when
Demo says it, okay.
Demo has no idea. So
I'm not going to say how he functions in a team, because like Fabian said, we've got no idea. But what I will say is the raw talent he's got, he won't be known by a lot of the people that view EU well, I don't think. The kind of general viewers, maybe even some of the casters, but the teams were all aware of him. The teams all know him. And Secret, I think, in a way, have done very well to actually get him. No disrespect, Titan, with the position of where Secret are at, to pick up, like you say, he's probably the next coveted person. You talk about Benja, Spoit, Mowgli, etc. Savage was probably next up in that list. And I think that if he is slotted into a system that works well for him, he really could have a good stage.
Well, Spoit to Rogue is obviously the next transfer. I think that's definitely the biggest transfer that people are looking at. We got to see a bit of him. Gamers Without Borders performed really well. But then again, Rogue's issues are more on a teamwork basis, which is something that harks back to what Fabian was saying. It's not just about the individual. It's about how the team plays fully. But let's look at it from just an entertainment point of view. Okay? Entertainment point of view, Spoit entering a U League, this is like Bolo entering NAL. This is huge when it comes to your average player that looks up to these incredibly talented players, sees how they are, and now they're in pro play. They're going to turn around and watch that league and see how they perform in there. From a purely like, how does this look like to the average viewer? This is really good. It brings so much more interest now to an already incredibly interesting league.
I don't know who Spoit is. I only know Spunk.
Yeah, it was his alternate personality that was playing in GWB. That's exactly why. But he didn't only play well on LMG Finca. Okay, he played well in everything that he was put on.
I think from an entertainment point of view, it's great. Like, he is by far and away the biggest. I'm just looking at the EU or the Twitch streamers for Siege. He's in the top 5 of individuals, take away the Rainbow Six stream and everything. He's in the top 5 streamers of this game. He's the biggest streamer in Europe, maybe. Well, Penguin's not in Europe anymore. So, like, to have him in the league brings more eyes to the leagues, brings more eyes to the teams, which is probably a key part of the reason why a lot of teams, because, let's be fair, a lot of teams were interested in picking him up as a player. And that's probably a big part of the reason, because he was... Well, he is unproven in the kind of comp arena, so I can see why people keep referencing it to in a similar vein to how Bolo was, because he was very similar. Turned 18, picked up straight into a team. So I think from an entertainment point of view, it will be good. We know he's absolutely cracked. We've seen him be absolutely cracked all over his streams in ranked, and also we did see it in recently in the tournament as well. There's a few reservations. I think a lot of people have a few reservations about the team that he's in and how that's going to function. But I think from a purely entertainment standpoint, it's only a good thing having him in the league.
I mean, the player he replaced kind of makes sense, right? Rips had a really rough stage overall. But now it comes back to the role and the 5 players that I spoke about with Secret. I question how they're going to play as a team. Because I don't see that they have any either soft support or any hard support, and sure, Leon is going to move over to support role, and I think it's Deepak going to go take the soft support, but you're putting players that have never played support in their lives into the support roles. You've had 5 players in a team now that have always had themselves being the priority. I don't know if that's going to work. I think that maybe long-term it might, but I mean, I'll be honest, even if you take a break, you should be beating tier 3 teams. I don't really care. You have a new player. You have 4 players that still understand the basics of the ideas of what your team wants to play. You taking a week off, that's not an excuse, or 2 weeks off to lose against tier 3 teams. I just don't accept that.
I think it'll be... Sorry, Fabian. I think it'll be very stylistically where they'll have success or not. The one thing that they really struggled against the tier 3 teams was the teams that just sat and repel, that just essentially didn't do anything, because they essentially wrote, as you say, they're a team that wants to take gunfights, right? And if they're not offered like a free gunfight, a free 1v1, and it's a team just kind of systematically taking ground, not really doing too much. They tend to just swing in and force gunfights and then lose them. And I think, as you say, like you said, doesn't seem to be a natural support player or a natural leader in there as such. It feels kind of manufactured. I think that's where I have the concerns about Rogue.
I think Titan.
I think Rogue could definitely see some success, to be honest, with a big couple of support. Obviously, an individual, very talented, did very well in GWB. Again, I'll sort of preface that and like add the asterisk of it was against tier 3 teams. Just to note that one.
Okay.
It's also not a UL. That's another sort of kettle of fish that somebody has to get over in terms of conquering those nerves. I think Fabian has a very good point, though, in terms of like the structure and the balance of the team is very odd, and it's a little bit sort of different to necessarily what you'd look at. It doesn't seem to flow so naturally. You can't really pinpoint people into positions, and I think you could see some inconsistencies. I think Jack said it during the major a little bit about sort of teams that have that more structure and sort of more consistency about them and sort of more traditional side of things. They normally see the success over the long term compared to those who are maybe more frag heavy, more sort of, orientating towards just taking those gunfights. They have shorter term success, and maybe in a best of one system, it'll work because you've got 5 players there who all individually could pop off, and you only need one guy to maybe drop you 16 kills, as we saw last season with Keenan, and boom, there you go. You just suddenly manufacture a 3-point win out of nowhere. That's I guess one of the downsides for best of one system, really. But it could benefit Rogue, but at the same time, you might also see some consistencies issues in terms of whereby they couldn't beat Wild, for example, in GWB, and to be honest, they did take a map off them, and there were some close rounds and close maps, but it sounds rough and it sounds harsh to say, but they were comprehensively beaten. Maybe they were holding some stuff back. Maybe.
No, you don't hold stuff back in a tier tournament with that.
Well, that's what I'm going to say.
I was just about to say, I don't think they did.
When you get the shot at a $2 million tournament to qualify to number one,
it's worrying. It's slightly concerning when you look at it in sort of the bigger picture. You see Wild, for example, which is a team obviously in tier 3 that maybe a lot of people, that view this maybe at tier 1 level don't know about them too well, but they're a team with a decent amount of balance. They've got their good support players and people like BZ, clear sort of leader of the team. You've got, the ex tier 1 players as well, and they're experiencing Corey and Aces. And you've got 2 really good sort of talented individuals and very, a young up and comer in Jay, along with Gisela. And, that team has a balance, as Fabian says. You have to have that balance and then also have that team play. And I think overall, Wild, they're friends. They went in with a sort of a carefree attitude, obviously wanting to make, the land for $2 million. Who wouldn't? But at the same time, kind of realizing that this is their experience a little bit to show off, see what they could do really against the tier 1 teams, against the big boys on the big stage. And again, it shows if you have team play, if you have the basic fundamentals in place, and if you do have the right sort of system and structure there, you can see success. And they did.
Who's on top in your mind? If you were to rate teams right now in EU League, how would it be? Who would be top 4? That's really the most important part.
Can I go first?
Go ahead, Jack.
My top 4 would be currently
in that order. In the order.
Do I have to give it in the order?
No, you don't have to. You can just say top 4.
G2.
Okay.
BDS. This is where it gets a bit tricky and a bit ropey. I think Outsiders will make progress. I think they made some good pickups for stage 1. Didn't quite get there. I think Outsiders will make good progress. And I don't know. I don't know who my 4th team is. Heroic, probably. I think they were very hurt by the way the major went. And for me, I worry about them. I think they'll be okay. But I wonder if stage 2 will be a bit of a slump on the back of that, of feeling sorry for themselves. I think their reaction from the major will determine that. But yeah, I think on the balance, it would be Heroic.
Fabian?
I'm going to agree with Jack on G2. I'm expecting them to improve, and if they don't, then they're a team that I see as a failure. But I'm going to put G2 as number 1, BDS as number 2. I think M&M are going to take the step up. They showed in the end of the last stage that they played really, really good Siege, and I think that mentally they just needed to get past that hurdle. I think M&M will end up on 3rd place. I think it's between Wolves and Outsiders for the place after that. I think Rogue are going to have a struggle. I just don't think that they have the team structure that's necessary. I don't see a clear leader in either personality or in terms of the person who will teach the play. So, for example, I don't see the person who will teach Spoit the basics. I don't see that guy. Might be Leon, but I don't know if he has the personality for it. other than that, I know Kryn and Counter because I play with them. They don't talk a lot. They're not the guys that will make decisions in terms of communication and then make a play. They'll just make the play. The APAC, I don't know how much he will do in that part. I look at him more as a flex player, and now they're putting him into a support role, which means that a flex player is the one who coordinates a lot more with the front group. Now they put him on a support role, so they take away his ability to communicate, to put someone who communicates less on said role. I see lots of issues. I think they're going to fall down. And then I'll be honest, I see Navi, Secret, and Pwns as the bottom 3 teams again.
Yeah, Jack. I see you're itching to add to it. Go ahead. I just want
to talk about Rogue, because Rogue, they could well have a honeymoon phase. That's a lot of individually talented players. If they get themselves on good maps, Chalets, the Borders, Oregons, for example, where they can just, all go through the motions, that type of stuff, they could well have a honeymoon phase. And we could be sat here 100%. In 3 months' time saying, wow, Rogue got top 4, they'll go into the major. I think my worry for them is more long-term consistency. And I wonder if it is part of more of a master plan of, bring somebody else in stage 3, starting to look towards next year. But yeah,
let's we got more regions to go through, by the way. So here's our last look on Europe.
Yeah, I won't give you exact. I'll just say like top 4, but not in order.
Yeah.
Probably G2, BDS, Heroic, 3 of them. Then I have to say Secret obviously is 4th. Otherwise, I'm not being a coach properly, am I?
Jesus Christ! Maybe this is why you guys picked up the players you did. Delusional all through. No, I'm just taking the bit.
There you go, Fabian. You were spending way too much time in the UK. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I've become a crazy person too.
Gotta come back on it. But that's Europe. We move through the rest of our regions, and I think it makes sense for us to go on to APAC and what's been going on there, because Korea especially has had major changes. But before we dive into that, we also just had Japan League final, basically. Big game, big stage, audience, the whole shebang, and a massive trophy. That Japan's looking really good. When are we moving to Japan to cover Japan League?
I think
the question.
I mean, ask Fnatic about moving to Japan and then probably get an answer.
I just asked Mag at this point, and to just swim, my dude. Just you'll get there faster at this point.
I just hope we never have to go there. Well, in terms of land, I want to go there, but I don't want to fucking
what is
move
that?
there.
No, you know what? I don't want to go to Japan. You're the one that was talking about, oh my god, the Japanese fans are so amazing.
Yeah, they are. They are literally the best scene when it comes to all that stuff. But 100%. Do I want to live there? No. I'll stay here.
It's got to be better than Paris.
He wants to be in his little village.
Everything is better than Paris.
Production are currently casting me.
Remember, the production team is French, so...
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Paris is still shit. Just like European Siege.
Stinky.
No, it's not stinky.
No, you can say words here. Like, we're not bound by the rules of the broadcast, which, let's be honest, you have broken many, many, many times.
I have never done anything wrong.
Titan, I know you watch all the regions. What do you think about Japan right now?
I mean, I'm actually quite surprised with some of the teams that aren't obviously in like actual, the top leagues in there, in sort of APAC and the APAC North leagues. But you saw also a couple of teams. I think it's like what they called. Reject, who recently made it, they didn't have too bad of a showing. I think also you had like another team, Crest Gaming. I think they're one of like the tier 2, tier 3 teams also in APAC as well.
Yeah.
And then to see a team like Scars, who obviously aren't up there, but I suppose they're actually going to be one of the more successful teams coming up over next year. Potentially, see them next year in APAC North. To beat a team like CAG, obviously, is.
Are you surprised that CAG threw yet another game?
Oh, that's a harsh way of putting it.
Nothing surprises us with CAG.
I think it's not that I'm surprised or, not surprised, sorry, but I think it's more so a case of obviously the inconsistencies with their play style do lead to rounds like that and sort of things like that where they can be close, they can look like they're all in control, and then suddenly, bam, snap your fingers, it's all gone for you. And Scars, they had some inconsistencies themselves, but obviously, I guess, pound for pound, they also hit their shots better on the day. I think the biggest shock was obviously the massive investment from PSG Esports. I didn't really know for them, did it?
That really comes out of nowhere, and we kind of know that PSG it's the same in Dota as it is here in Siege, like investment in Asian countries, Asian esports, to kind of stay away. Like, okay, PSG, if you're in Europe, you know who PSG are, like Paris Saint-Germain. Even if you don't know anything about sports, you know that this is a massive team in sports in Europe, and they are pretty big. And for example, FIFA, etc., in the EU. But when it comes to other games, it seems like they've definitely chosen to invest heavily in the Asian market, be it in China, Korea, or Japan.
I mean,
And
their Dota 2 team, for example, won. I think they won the recent TI.
One of the best teams in Dota currently. So I'm not surprised at all. So aside from that, there's been some changes also within Korean teams. Some had us in our own kind of WhatsApp group chat in EUL and APAC Talent asking the question like, why? So I kind of would like to go through that for a bit because Damwon been saved from those changes, but there's change on Talon. Sandbox as well. We had Good Boy coming in, Arukaze as well. What's been going on through there? Because T1 is no longer T1 as we also knew them too.
There's been a lot of change.
Yes.
I'm just looking at the little document that we've been sent. I didn't quite realize the extent of it, but yeah. And I mean, there was always going to be that kind of backlash, right? After none of the teams made it anywhere close to getting to the major. When Korea had kind of had its period of dominance, particularly with Damwon Kia, obviously, in kind of the APAC North region and then going to these international events. So I'm not surprised to see it. Some of the changes, and again, I suppose it's what Fabian said, it's hard to talk about individual players, but it's kind of, I don't know. Talons are kind of the biggest questions for me because these players, especially from my point of view, are unknown. And I thought Talon had made really good progress for APAC North Stage 1. So it'll be about how that... If they can't continue progressing, then sure, the proof will be in the results. But some of them are quite unknown.
For me, it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction, I think, especially for APAC North that I've been following and actually been studying quite a lot. Like, to me, it doesn't make sense. I'll be honest with you guys. I do not think that the teams we got from APAC for the major were the best teams in the APAC region.
I agree.
I think we were missing the 3 best teams from that region completely at the event.
Yeah.
So to see 2 of them making roster changes, I don't know if it's because they felt that they had lost because of one player and they were like feeling resent towards them. But if they looked through their own season and they had looked through their own gameplay, the changes doesn't make sense no matter who you pick up, because they played phenomenal Siege in comparison to their opponents, and then they still changed players. I have big question marks. That CAG made it. I love watching CAG play.
Really?
They were not the best team to go there. Yeah,
exciting.
I love watching Anyton play just because of the individual performance.
So
but I don't think that they're a good team. I genuinely believe that they're really bad in terms of teamwork. Still, they made it through. And then they were like the team that actually were playing really well in the playoffs. But the 3 other ones that we had from APAC North, they just didn't show up. Any changes here, to me, are odd. That's the word I'll use.
I guess it's the sandbox changes that are most questionable, and it's more role changes. Obviously, they brought in Arukaze. We saw how good Arukaze was on T1. Great player. But then you're looking at all these players, and it's kind of like, I hate to say it for Sandbox, but they're going to be this team that will run through APAC North because of the individual talent, because you can domestically run through APAC North. They've got a great team of individuals. So I think we will see them probably every major, maybe SI, but they don't strike me as a team that have that team play that will even come close to getting out of any of the groups at the majors or SI. I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but I feel like they're just going to be happy to sit in this middle ground of being the top domestically, being the bottom internationally. And that's what that kind of roster change strikes me of.
Now, unfortunately for the T1 squad, now known as XT1, up until there will be any changes with that, we're kind of, left hanging dry to verify things and as they go. There are some, how to say, things going through the airwaves and how changes could be for the squad in APAC North. So I really hope for them that they can find the right people for the team, huh?
I mean, they've lost probably their best player.
Yes.
In Arukaze, and then 11 has been quiet for 2 or 3 stages now after popping off when he did last year. So I think that's a roster that they used to have this thing of they were very fun to watch and they were a banana skin for teams. I don't even know if they're going to have that anymore. So I think that's one of the teams that I do significantly worry about.
How does APAC North look like then? Titan, any predictions on how the top 4 will be?
I mean, I think Jack has a good point about the sandbox team potentially just looking more so right now at like domestic sort of success rather than, or like regional success, I should say, rather than necessarily international success with the pickups. I think I agree. Also, I echo the point of a lot of knee-jerk reactions in terms of changes, in terms of people being removed from teams, because I think also the way that the playoff system obviously was handled with APAC doesn't necessarily always provide the best environment for potentially having the best teams turning up. Just playing on 100 ping is not always, the greatest idea in the world.
True.
And that will have an effect as much as people might say like it doesn't. So I think you'll probably see some of the sort of, the usual names at the top still. So Damwon and Sandbox. And then you'll kind of just see maybe like Talon might still be up there around there. CAG might just make it just purely based off, again, individual talent, individual skill. I know one name I want to say that will improve is Fnatic, but realistically, looking at them last stage, looking at their pickups this stage, I mean, where do they go to go upwards? And for an org of their size and their magnitude, it's a little...
Their magnitude? Okay, I see what you're doing there. What about APAC South, Titan? Because there was a lot of APAC South representation at the major, which unfortunately didn't really go anywhere. So is this going to keep on kind of rocking the boat in APAC South?
I don't know. I mean, APAC South I actually enjoy watching. It's actually one of those regions I probably actually watch a little bit more than maybe necessarily I should.
Is it just because Dev Marta is a caster there? I think that explains it.
Maybe. No, I mean, it's actually just some of the teams there. There's so many different styles, to be honest, in APAC South. You have the Australian teams who try to play, they try to play a very structured sort of system, very kind of like, I guess like NA style is probably the best way to put it, very methodical, very sort of step by step, whereas you've got some of the more sort of, like the Taiwanese team in Direwolves, which is just chaos, loose. You've got Ed there who just does whatever he wants, and it's just great to watch realistically. And then you've got other, the big names and things, like IG, for example, who went through all these changes in stage 1 to make this new, I guess, like super team kind of for APAC South, and flop, kind of, really. That's the truth of it.
Elevate couldn't make it, so we're not going to mention Elevate here. Because
I'm going to leave that one, But Chiefs, for example, I mean, I don't think they put up a bad showing, to be honest, at the major. I don't think they got a win, if I remember correctly.
No, but they got a couple of close games.
Yeah, that's the thing. They did it as well in Sweden, where they get close to beating teams, and they get your 7-5 results. You get close, you go, oh, blimey, they might actually get some decent bloody scores, but reality is they just fall short of the final hurdle. So I think for them to have made the major, their first stage with the changes, along with that as well, still looks competitive internationally. I think you'll see them next stage maybe take that leap up, that step up, maybe compete for the top 2 spots, really, like actually be up there with Direwolves. I don't think anybody's going to go flawless again next stage like Direwolves did, which, applause to them. That was very, very impressive to do so. But I think they'll actually probably become maybe the top team in APAC South next season. And Direwolves could, but they need to add structure into their gameplay, because right now they lack it, really. It's just a lot of individual talent.
And on to our next region, North America, our sister region here, as of course we're Europe. We want to look at them and see what they're doing. And Fabian, I want to ask you a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Blast can now play at Parabellum, and he played GWB. Is this now we can look at, hey, Eska, Penguin, Blast? This is
Blast is not in UL. Shows, I don't know, the brainlessness of EU, I guess. He's such a talented player. Yeah, no, he should be in Europe. I don't understand.
I don't know how a French team has not picked him up.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The guy is more talented. He has more talent in his left toe than I have in my entire body. Like, it just doesn't make sense. He should be in Europe. He's a very talented player. And overall, I just think we're seeing a league that's they've taken steps. They have improved and they've improved and they've improved. And I don't really know what the recipe for their success is. I think that their teams are more well balanced in terms of setup, in terms of this player is a support player and this player is an entry fragger. I think their team is more balanced that way. But is that the case? That in terms of that's the reason for their success? I don't think so. I think that they just no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go back to Europe a little bit. Because when you guys spoke about
even though we're in NA, but okay.
But listen here. I think European teams have no self-responsibility taken whatsoever. They sit there and we talk about tier 3 teams doing poorly. Yeah, the tier 3 teams that you might be practicing might be complete ass in terms of their discipline and their respect. But that doesn't mean that you need to fall to the same level and play the same game. If they throw their game away, yeah, pretend like they're not and just keep playing the same game and practice your own stuff. It's not an excuse for Europe to fall as a region completely and then sit there and blame it on the tier 3 teams. You guys are getting fucking crushed by them. What are you guys trying to pull? Like, are you guys trying to trick people? Just sitting there on your paycheck, getting fucking shit tons of money every month, just so that you can suck?
Yeah.
They sit there and blame it on others, but NA, they have had the same issues that Europe have now. They've had those for 6 years, 7 years, and they are way ahead of us now. I don't care what your excuse is in Europe. NA is working harder than you. They might go to the Balenciaga store and buy themselves a nice pair of shoes, but those nice pairs of shoes is apparently making them play better. I don't know. They're playing better than Europe. It's a shambles.
They earn that paycheck.
I've never lost to an NA team. Yeah, I've never lost to an NA team in my entire career.
You also were in a different era, though, Fabian, to European teams now against NA teams in terms of the infrastructure and setup that they have. NA teams all live together. NA teams are all in gaming houses together.
They do.
And that gives you so much more flexibility in terms of development and progress, whereas European teams don't. And you can't argue that fact. And that fact is so huge. It's so huge, so massive.
You want to know why this is why this doesn't even makes a difference? Because European players don't have the discipline to work hard from home. When you go through strats, I know for a fact people will sit on their phone. When you sit there and have mental meetings, they don't give a crap. They're sitting there playing some single player game. This is not all the structure. In the end, it's the players, all of it. They might have, probably.
But that's the difference, isn't it? That's a big factor.
Is it the job of the person who is working with the team to say, oh yeah, you shouldn't sit on your phone? No, it's a job of the player to be professional enough to fuck off their phone. And I don't care if this is going to sit here and we're going to be like, oh yeah, they have the infrastructure. Yeah, they do. What are we going to do about it as Europe? And we're doing nothing. The players are not showing that they have the drive, the discipline, or the will to give up those things. And that's on Europe, not on NA. Mm-hmm. And we sit there and have so many excuses for ourselves. They don't have validity. They don't. Players just don't have it.
And we end that with a clear Vamos Penta. Just seeing the logo in the back.
That team didn't have good discipline either. But we had better than others.
And you know what? This is something even more like when you guys were so young in the day and competing, and so many young players in those days. We're talking like 3, 4, 5 years ago. Now you look at a team like Astralis, where in NA, this is a team of many young players that have never really seen experience like they did at the major. Look at the damage that they have done in the major. First of all, in NAL on its own, where Jesse was talking about it by the end of the year, our colleague in NAL, hey, this is this team, look out for them. They show up at the major and they rock everybody's socks off. That was beautiful, incredibly wonderful team to watch. And the question is now, like, do they keep this up? Even Exet had those flashes. Teams TSM, Space Station, they were not at the major, but maybe they have the time to sit back and kind of learn from the newcomers. It's really weird to look at it this way because it never was this way, was it, Fresh?
I hate saying this, but the region that I'm most looking forward to watching in Stage 2 is NAL, because where's the free games for teams, right? If you look at, and no disrespect to UL, but teams definitely not target games, but they know if they're against the lower tier EUL teams, they're going to have an easier time. But if you look down the as you just said, in NAL, Astralis grand final of the major have this kind of explosive playstyle. Oxygen, they keep picking up these young players, improving them, and are a completely solid team. Dark Zero just won the, very methodical, won the championship. Except have got that Brazilian style with Bodega. And then, that's only the top 4 of Stage 1. Then you've got SSG, former world champions, always solid team. Parabellum, the best European import they could have picked up. Sonics was so good for so long, had a poor stage. TSM, the world champions. So where's your free game? You may be talking about Beast Coast and Mirage, who, you could call the weaker teams. Maybe you couldn't. I don't know. Which means that league is so competitive, but also it's competitive at such a high level that it's going to be a really kind of fascinating watch through Stage 2 to see if those teams continue the momentum, and the established teams that didn't go to the most recent major, whether they actually make the improvements that they needed as well.
Who are your top 4, Titan, in NAL?
Oxygen. This is where it gets bloody hard.
Yes,
I
it
don't know.
is.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to go OXG. I'm going to say Astralis as well, because I just think team play wise, at least the way that they work together in their pairs and trios when they're around on the map, is just second to none, really.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to give SSG one of the top 4 spots. And then I'm going to say DZ as well in the top 4. Yeah.
Okay. It's a tough
Completely
one
agree,
because
man.
you never know when the Sonics and TSM will just snap back to into life.
Never know.
It's such a tough thing for us as like the talent that usually works, EUL broadcasts. They're like, yeah, they're just really, really good.
I mean, one differentiator that NAL has, or the NA teams have, is I mean, Titan will know this as well, but like I do because I'm such a nerd. I was going to say something else there. When I do a lot of data for every team, a lot of like macro data about map ban preferences, and what maps teams play, and most of the NA teams, I'd say 6-7 of them play 8 out of the 9 map pool.
Yeah.
And you compare that to a U where we're on like 3 or 4 maps. There's teams that want to ban 5-6 maps if they can and have a really limited map pool. There's a massive difference. And I guess that's maybe what got NAL through deep into the tournament at the most recent major, is how quickly they brought in the 3 new maps, but also have such a good map pool on all the teams. I said it going back to when TSM won the Invitational. They'll win it off the back of such a big, flexible map pool. And yeah, I think NAL is in somehow, and they've kind of just crept up on it. We had that LATAM dominant period, and NAL has just crept up to become the kind of, I would say, the number 1 region.
And you say that, though I do not wish to terrorize anybody, but if you thought 2021 was the year of Brazil and LATAM in general, but specifically Brazil, it's gonna get much worse for everybody that is not from the region itself, because an announcement as of literally yesterday, because we are filming this on the 7th of June, BR6 will be played on LAN for this stage, starting stage 2. Now, no audience has been, because this is something that you would see in the replies from the R6 Esports Brazil account, saying, well, no audience yet. This might change in the future, obviously. But right now, the players not only are living together, but they're also doing the same thing that NA is doing, which is now they're going to start playing their games on stage together. That is scary, because Brazil specifically is incredibly scary just by them living together. Imagine now every game they're playing is a stage game. It's over.
It's not really the same though, Milosh. It's like if you sit on stage and there's no audience, you're just sitting on a different spot and you sat on.
But NAL is doing the same thing.
That's not it's not the reason that they're playing on stage is why they're better. The reason why they're better is because they can keep the discipline up by having people that keep the responsibility within the team, actually disciplining the players, because they're in the same house. You can't sit on your phone like this when you're going to strats. If the guy is right in front of you, he'll take your phone and toss it in the wall. I would have done that. But that's why they're better, not because they're on stage. If they get the crowd, that's when I'm going to say it as an advantage. Until then, it's just playing on a different position. It might actually make players more uncomfortable in terms of just not enjoying the plays.
Biggest change. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think a small comfort aspect of it as well. It's just the LAN environment. Just like actually playing the game on LAN is a nicer game to play, obviously, than the game online. So that obviously just makes it a little bit happier for players as well, which always, then when you do go to international events, you're just more used to it. You're more comfortable with it, rather than obviously having to play on, I don't know what Brazilian ping was against each other, but maybe like 30, 40, maybe 50 if their worst case scenario. And,
one is better than 30.
Yeah, exactly, in a nutshell. I mean, the game works.
100%.
You trust the sound and stuff.
You cannot compare even super low ping Siege versus a LAN custom game. It's just
precisely. So, as I say, I agree with Fabian. It won't make a massive difference. It won't like see LATAM suddenly just jump to the stars and, oh my goodness, where have they gone? Hello, keep up. Can we keep up? No, it's not going to be that. It's going to be more so a case of just the players feel more comfortable when they do go to LANs, especially for some of the top teams. I mean, I think LATAM right now, Brazil especially, has like a nice amount of LANs. I think Copper Elite 6 is always on LAN as well. And so they have the extra chances compared to like maybe other teams, but it does just give that extra comfort. You're just constantly playing in that same environment. It's just like, well, nice, comfortable. Thank you.
Another old guard pro player retires from the player position, Julio, now to coaching. That came out of nowhere.
Did it? If you look at their team performance, they
No,
were
me
playing it
ultimate
really
Mickeys.
bad.
Let's roll back to demo
We're
here.
calling
The
them the
Mickey
Mickeys,
team,
aren't
you know,
we?
the Mickeys,
Yeah, but
as Demo
the
says.
demo is a little bit delusional. I played ranked with him, and
Enough said. Enough said there for Fabian.
I don't need to go
We
further.
played one game of ranked with him last night as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you won. That was enough. All right.
Yeah.
It was a one and done, trust me.
His opinions doesn't matter too much to what I build mine on, but that Julio moves on to a coach. I think when you get older, if you don't have the drive anymore, it might be that, but it could also be that the other younger players feel like there needs to be a change. If the change is correct or not, I don't know the new players that they brought up. Like I know who they are, but I don't know them. So I couldn't tell you if it's going to be a good change. But it didn't come out of nowhere. They played really poorly. And when you are in a team like that that's been to the top of the world, like they have, well, almost. They didn't win like me. You kind of.
They did.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, they did. They did win one. Only one, not two. It doesn't matter.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes, of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
Back to back, yes.
Yeah.
How could we forget?
When
Yeah,
you've
exactly.
won it,
Was
you've
it
won the
2020
big
they
one.
won?
21.
21.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When you've won the big one, at some point you're like, you know what, I'm getting too old for this.
Not only that, but it's also that the team will put themselves in a different position where they will be like, we need to win all the time.
Yeah.
And then when they stop doing that and they have that bad of a performance, a change is not maybe what you want, but it's what you're going to make.
Yeah. It's more difficult to hold on to that top position and keep winning than it is to get a win. Although it is incredibly impressive, of course, what NIP have done, it is still way more difficult to keep winning back to back to back, especially with how Siege is changing right now. Nobody can hold on to a crown for more than that weekend itself. Once the next stage starts in their own region, they can barely hold on. I mean, look at TSM winning Invitational to where are TSM in NAL, the stage right after, a month after.
I mean, being brutally honest, I'm surprised it's taken NIP this long to make the changes. I saw them at Invitational 2022, where obviously they were disgracefully bad. Yeah, like considering they were the defending champions, it was a horrendous defense of that championship. And
it somehow was worse than G2.
Yeah.
Hey, we had a sub with 2 weeks and we won 2 in a row.
And we got to playoffs, at least.
And we got to playoffs, yeah.
I hit a nerve, didn't I? Yes, you were saying, Jack.
Because there's two of us here. What I will say is, when I saw them kind of moping about the 2 or 3 days after they got eliminated.
Oh, God.
Julio looked done. Like, he looked done. And obviously, I don't speak Portuguese. I didn't have a conversation with them. But the body language they were exhibiting as a team was a team that was just done. Yeah. And, you know, that had ran its course. It got to the point, it got to the pinnacle, and it wasn't going to get there again. And I'm not saying NIF won't get there again. Obviously, they've got some talented players. But Julio's body language in particular, I'm not surprised that this step has been taken. If anything, I'm surprised it's taken it. You know, he's had another stage. I thought it would have been after Invitational.
I mean, it could be just people not being available, maybe.
Maybe.
Potentially waiting for the right transfers for it. So we've, you know, that's a lot of things in there. There's some players that have been around, you know, for ages that have performed really well and had great moments. Julio's one of them. You know, Canadian's one of them. Pengu, Fabian. You talk way back in the day before retirement. Zig, Mav also in that same way. All these names, and Nesk somehow is the one that actually, if you want to mention kind of this old guard, Nesk is the one that still, since day one to now, still performs really well. And Team Liquid look really good. You know, there's still a very good team despite the fact that they couldn't go so deep into the major.
I mean, they went semifinals.
That's pretty good. You know, like,
not to be
we would expect them to win. If you asked a lot of people, like, this might have been Liquid OXG in the final.
I mean, Liquid are the team that promises so much.
I feel like,
just lets you down at the very. They should be winning. I mean,
yes,
the team. Even when you look at their performances after the state, after the tournaments, after the stages, after the whatever, like, you look at them and you're like, you know, everybody's positive, everybody's looking amazing. That's like individually, everybody's probably like the best in the region, the bloody world. How are you not winning tournaments?
If you look at their S tier tournaments, apart from obviously the Pro League finals they won against you, Fabian.
We had a sub, don't forget.
That's a common excuse. Third, fourth place at Charlotte. 9th, and then we'll go back to the invitationals of, you know, top 10 Invitational 18, top 8 Invitational 19, top 10 Invitational 20, second Invitational 21, and then 6th Invitational 2022. It's like they're always there, they're always dangerous, but they're just
But
not
no majors in
getting over the
between.
line. No majors. And there are teams that
Big
should have won
changes.
so much more as well.
Yep.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes not even making it to the wedding itself if you're accounting for the majors. So big questions there. W7M, coming out of nowhere also still to look at. Obviously, you can't dig too deep into Brazil and Latam in general just because of, if we're looking back at the Charlotte Major, because of how things went down, of course.
Yeah.
But given like the team, especially in this case, like Team One, with 3 players out of the 5, even their coach couldn't make it there. Liquid, the teams that were there, they played well and they made it deep. So not surprising. We're still going to have to review that come summertime in the next major and how things go, because like I said, stage 2 for BR6 will be played on land. So that might be something of an advantage that could carry forward. Of course, we'll have to examine it as the stage goes forward. But now just to wrap this part up, top 4 out of Brazil and Latam in general, just because of how massive a region, I don't think we want to go that deep into it. But if you have teams you see, go ahead. What do you think?
Because Brazil is just the region in LATAM, so no matter if we have the other ones, Brazilian teams are always just so dominant.
I think the problem, just very quickly before Fabian goes in on the Argentinian and the Mexican teams, is they had a bit of a knee-jerk reaction on transfers after Stage 3 last year, and they were building to being very competitive with the Brazilian teams, and it feels like they've hit a bit of a reset button there where they're back at the point of not being too competitive against a very established region in Brazil. Because they were getting there, and then they've come backwards. So,
I mean, I think by the end of the year they'll be tighter with some of the sort of teams that are just scraping into BR6.
But yeah, it will be Brazilian teams, I think, at the major and Copa.
Top 4?
I can start. I'll start. Liquid is number 1. V7M is number 2. I think Team 1 is going to be staying on the number 3, and then I think FaZe is going to take the jump and reconquer the number 4 spot.
Okay, not even Mibre in there.
Nah.
Okay, fair.
I'll go differently. I think Liquid will be there or thereabouts once again. So Liquid are in there. I would put MIBR in there. I'm a big fan of MIBR. I don't make a secret about that. I think one of the things that I can go get my jersey if you want. One of the things that I like about MIBR is they do a lot of very default stuff, or what we would consider very default, but they do it exceptionally well. Okay. Team 1, I really like the fact that Lagonis is able to just project a team into majors again. And then I want to see a reaction from 00 Nation, 00 Nation, the old Team 1. I think there's a reaction coming there because that is a good core of players.
From my side, I think it would be Liquid 1, FaZe 2nd, Team 1 3rd, and MIBR 4th, to be honest.
You don't believe in the V7M power?
I want to, but I
worry.
They rely so heavily on those 2 kids to absolutely.
Someone has to take people's phones.
Yeah, that's why
when they're playing.
Yeah.
Uninstall Twitter.
Uninstall
Twitter, and then you'll play well. But honestly, it was
childish.
Yeah, it was,
genuinely. Right. And you know what? To some extent, you can say, I mean, at this point, we are all old enough. Definitely a child, not just childish behavior, but the person themselves, or in that age range. Anyways. But then
it's still on those in charge of them to hold them responsible.
100%.
They failed terribly in terms of either their management side of things or coaching side of things. Yep. Awful display from them. Awful.
Yeah.
For next stage, I'm gonna take a spade of sand with me into the studio every day and then throw sand at Jack whenever we disagree.
Bucket sand.
I look forward to
my
that.
bucket of sand.
You know what? Fabian, if by the end of the stage, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have enough sand to make a little beach at the studio in Paris. And frankly, who would not want to see Jack in a bikini?
Do you know what?
Throwing that out there.
I've seen him naked. That's much better.
It's gonna be really hot in Paris in June and July as well, so I'm kind of down for this. I will wear a bikini. It can go in my showroom.
I think we need that on broadcast. A bikini. Fresh bikini on broadcast.
I've literally just said this. This is going to be live. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. By the way, Victor, our team that runs this, make sure that you were quoting all of this for socials, because we need these sorts of things for it. This is what drives.
Oh,
I would say
no.
it's a viewer integration,
Is that
as the
Twitch legal?
corpos like to call it. It's not on Twitch, so it doesn't matter. Well, we can leak them in, I say, like EU League OnlyFans that we're
Right,
starting
okay.
it from now. We
Ah.
imagine like a summer calendar for EUL. Imagine what you could do with like Hap. Anyways, we're gonna go away from all of that
Yeah, I
and
think we
move
should-
on to our next topic before we really get derailed. That
I
was
have long and
esports.
sexy toes, just so you know.
Go quick, next segment.
Next segment.
Get me out.
That was esports news. Thank you very much for watching it. Now we are on to what people have been posting on the subreddit, which is always a great thing for us to go through. It's Reddit
it?
droning. So first up, I don't know if we could show this directly to Titan. I don't know. That's even.
I can just link it to him if you want.
Yes.
Yeah, just,
So
yeah.
we're going to go through things one by one. A user x-sessive_overlord, Dark Zero Esports fan. So that tells you something. Both ops being from CBRN Task Force is really ironic. Lion Finca starting shit tier god awful metas. Agree, disagree.
I mean, it's the only reason why Team Liquid's got a title, so yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, well, there it is. I was waiting for that one.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it didn't come earlier, to be honest.
Yeah, I was expecting that.
When I made the reference about Liquid and beating Fabian, I thought he would reference it then.
It's like you guys are sitting here saying that, oh, G2 Invitational 2020 did so poorly. Yeah, we made it just as far as any other EU team this major with a sub and 2 weeks of practice.
Hey, that's because you had an amazing counter analysis. Hang on, I
Accountant
want
analysis.
to tell this story because
Yeah, go
so
ahead.
we played against BDS and they had us on map pool quite significantly. Like you said, because we were operating with a sub with G2. So we took them to, at the time, one of their best maps, which was Cafe. But BDS at the time, they didn't have the coach and the analyst that they've got now. They weren't as adaptable. They did the same shit every single time. And we developed a strat with Glaz and Monty and Fuse and all this other complete crap.
Tashanka.
And we were all in Chassis's hotel room developing this live the night before. And Fabian, he's sat in the corner and he's like, I'm not fucking playing Glass. I'm just not doing it. I'm not doing it. 2.5 hours later, he's like, we could give it a try. And we did it the next day, and we absolutely melted them with this counter analysis strat. And I was
That
so
was
proud.
so bad.
The highlight of my career. Because we did a Thatcher math ban in those days, and they were so uncommon at that point, and it worked.
The worst part is that I would play
So I
any
take the credit.
operator. I would play any operator for the team. They could make any strat, put me on the shittiest operator, and I'll play. But when you come there and tell me play Glass, it's just like no.
People have been saying Glaz is back into the meta. We will talk about that later, but people have been saying Glaz meta for the past like year and a half, and I have not seen that. Maybe this patch coming up very soon.
now, yeah.
That'll
Now
be the
it's-
last
now
bit
it's
of
recent,
discussion
yeah.
for us today, so don't worry about it. Are up next, Bomb Tacos, who's somebody that posts regularly on the subreddit. R6 Esports, Intero's new groove. Wow, Intero, you lost some weight. Looking good, buddy. We don't usually, promote Intero on here, but he looks good, doesn't he?
I'm speechless. Wow.
That picture is a better one than all the media ones he gets at events. Let's go to the next one.
All
Can I
right,
have a controversial opinion?
go ahead.
Hat rocks a better turtleneck than Intero does.
Oh wow, there it is. Well,
True.
That-
I agree.
Honestly, I really agree with it. I think if Hap hit the gym like once, oh my god, if Hap hit the gym once a week, imagine what we would get at the end of it. Anyway, Sweaty Hap out of your mind. Next up by user Pixant.
Never.
Mirage Nightmare Nix returns to Mirage. We were talking, about NAL a bit ago, but the King is back. What do you feel about that?
interesting pickup. If he's he won the major with DZ being the counter analyst, and from everything I've heard, he's apparently like a very good IGL. So I mean, if that's the case, then it's a good pickup for the team. It just depends whether then I guess the rest of the people can frag around him. So I suppose, and I guess if he does actually enable them as well with this new lineup.
Okay.
I mean, if you have 5 players that are all fragging, they will take space off each other. You need someone to enable those fraggers to give them the support that they need to make their job easier.
But does he do that role? I don't think
Well,
Nix really does he necessarily?
No, not really. It would be more of an in-game leader part, but I guess that could also help them with it. Maybe move people around and shuffling them to different positions.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I think Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they looked when he was previously on this roster. They looked a lot more organized. And again, it's another one where we have to caveat this, that we don't know what's going on inside that team. But there was clearly some issues during stage one. They needed to make a change, and I think you talk about a change that brings you some consistency. He probably does provide that. Familiar with the setup, familiar with the org, the staff, a lot of the team. So I don't necessarily hate that change.
So from one happy, I guess, news from Mirage to one that breaks my heart, Flynn retires from esports. Flynn, of course, that worked management in Mirage for the past couple of years, known as at some point my duo and then Stokes' duo, and casted so many tournaments together. And he's retired from esports. He's doing something else now. So I don't know.
We
how do you
all
guys
go
feel?
up at some point.
We all
That's true.
retire.
At some point, we should. Yeah.
He never quite hit the top, but he deserved to. He was one of the most underrated casters, in my opinion.
Agreed.
He did really well.
I enjoyed his casting.
He had a great voice for casting as well. That was the thing. He had a great voice for it.
Yeah,
I can't wait to be in the same boat. Retirement is so nice. I think.
You're retired now.
Yeah, but that's it.
I do all the prep for the desk.
He wants another level.
You just turn up and
Oh
chat
yeah,
shit.
whatever you say. You're not completely wrong, but somewhat.
Oh, there it is.
I'm joking.
Don't worry, my contract's over soon. I'll retire. You'll have someone new to work with.
Oh, come on.
Do
Look,
something.
Fabian, if you're going to retire, can you just Jack with you? Like, you two
No,
go
no.
make a team. Jack, I know you would. If Fabian were to turn around and say, hey, Jack, we need an analyst for a new team that we got, like top tier. Hey, let's say it's an org or whatever that's already in EUL. Fabian gets picked up and he wants an analyst and he hires you. Would you both just leave EUL and leave me alone on the desk?
I'm not sure how much I can say about it, but that situation nearly did occur when I was retired. Where Fabian, I was actually mid-toilet, and Fabian video called me and he's like, yeah, there's a potential work going back to Pro League, and do you want to be the analyst? And I was like, Fabian, I'm retired. And he said, no, you're not. You're not allowed to be. So, yeah, I guess if Fabian was going into Pro League and needed an analyst, then he would just instruct me to go with him.
Yeah, basically, he's my bitch.
Fair.
No.
And I'd be left alone. So, Titan, I'm not going to officially poach you, but...
So,
I'm out of contract in September. Hey, I'm looking for you as soon as possible.
Oh, good God. Well,
Broken in the A's. Love it.
Next up, of course, we are going through Reddit now, droning through the subreddit. By the way, we do this. We always look back at the last week of what happened post-wise. Just for those that are out there, we usually record a couple of episodes per month, so you can prepare yourself if you're posting things, just in case you want to be mentioned on here. User Paces, who would win? 3 muscly boys or 1 pregnant aces, as he would put it.
Hey, don't do my ginger daddy like that.
I mean, honestly, I saw that reply on the timeline, and I'm like, dude, aces, it's just on another level. This man. And a wild win at the end. Corey, a guy who's been spending half his time at university, and aces, and of course the rest of the squad, they're not alone. They get the revenge. You got 3 hunks. Doesn't matter when you're in the server, baby.
There's clearly some extra motivation in that game with Rogue and Wild. Obviously, it was very clear. Aces wasn't happy that he was dropped. When he was dropped, they were citing that it was attitude reasons and that type of stuff. It was discussions on Reddit, Twitter, etc. Not going to delve too deep into that drama, but he had a lot more kind of motivation to go and beat his old team and his old roster, which he obviously did. I think I still worry. I'm not worried. I say that I worry about teams a lot. I don't worry, but I think Ace's problem is he's very individual as a player, and sometimes he looks like the best player on earth, and other times he looks like a liability. But I'm happy that he got revenge on his old team, I guess.
It just goes back to my worries about them. And again, you say you worry, I worry about Rogue, and that's not the way that we worry about teams. It's not that we're like, oh no, what will happen? It's that we see an issue, and it's an issue that could become bigger. That's what I see when I say I worry about something. And my worry with Rogue is, again, come back to it. They have no structure player. They only have fraggers. They go up against players that have this experience. They should never lose to a tier 3 team. There's no excuses. They kicked this player for a reason, and now he comes back with a new team and he beats them. I don't care if you have your dream roster of the 5 players you want. You should never lose to it.
Rookie sensation Spoit now, of course, in Rogue, just in case there's people that did not know that thing actually happened. We got to see him in EUL. I've already reserved the first interview win for Rogue. That'll be Spoit, just letting everybody know that's going to happen. If not, I would like to officially request the entire admin team to, penalty points for Rogue. Just give him as many as you got.
Titan agrees.
I'm down for that. Let's go for it.
Penalty points. That's all I'm looking for. Next up, and finally here in Reddit droning with user RedWarden_ Japan League playoffs on LAN live audience and some photos, close-ups of fans that were there and could show you the trophy, the stage itself, the fans, all of that. It looks good, doesn't it? Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks very nice. I like the trophy.
As we spoke about before, events in Japan are the absolute best events there is. Like,
True.
the crowd is, and the people in Japan are just so respectful, and they really care, and they show a different sort of fandom than what we're used to. And I think it's something every player should get to experience, because it's just a different world. I wish every event could be in Japan, I'll be honest with you.
I completely agree.
that would be the dream.
Mine is visas, but yes.
Yeah, but that's a problem for Brazilians, not for us.
For me.
So, or for you. Yeah, so, I bet
Send it for everyone, right, Fabian?
we get rid of the two things that we want to get rid of,
Oh boy, here we go. Fabian hosting EUL confirmed. There we go. We're just putting it out there.
No.
But
I put my foot down.
I am the best at every single role.
You have not done host
in game.
Oh mate, hosting's hard. You've got to think of random shit to talk about to fill time.
I told Fabian you can try it, and he did not. I told you could try it, Jack.
I did try it, and I was terrible at it. I'm going to have another go stage 2 then.
So basically all you have to say is, hello friends, welcome back to the EUL. That was a great game. Now we have an interview with some person that has no charisma. Let's talk to them for a minute, shall we? Do you have anything to say to the fans? Yeah, that's about it. I've done your job, Milosh. Can I have double play now?
He's actually there, Milosh.
He does, but you know what? He's also hasn't won anything in quite a bit, and he hasn't been picked up for any team
over
the past 2 years.
It's
So
a friend.
He tweeted twice about it as well.
It's a friends
Not
league.
just once. He went for a double down.
It's a friends league. That's all I'm gonna say.
Even I got an offer, Fabian.
If you're hanging with the good guys,
Oh no!
All right. If Fresh got an offer,
if you're hanging with your friends and they are the friends that are in the league, you'll get picked up eventually. That's just how it works.
So you're saying that you don't have any friends?
No, I don't make friends. I was busy winning events, not playing ranked.
and look at where you are today, working with us. How terrible!
playing
is
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Oh,
if
yeah,
you
I'm
look
still
at it, the
playing.
three enabling players of G2, all of them are out of competitive. Well, Goga's playing in tier 3 because he doesn't want to go for tier 1 anymore.
Is it that he doesn't want to, or that he can't?
He wanted to in the beginning, but
Mhm.
people weren't interested.
Okay.
And it has more to do with internal politics than it does to do with player ability.
I'm not surprised. That's usually how it goes.
Yep.
That's usually how it goes. Since we're obviously on the topic now, we've gone through Reddit droning. We've gone through some of the hypest posts that have been going on the airwave over the past week. Obviously a bit of a drier week, but don't you worry about it. Once the stage kicks off, as we get closer and closer to the beginning, don't worry, we're going to have some hot stuff maybe tonight.